So it was recommended like a month back when I had a CI/CD pipeline webinar. So it was recommended to do another CI/CD pipeline webinar based on Anypoint CLI. The previous one was on Jenkins and Maven. This one is primarily on Anypoint CLI, and just to cover a different domain, I've added Azure DevOps as well. So we'll be basically using the capabilities of Azure DevOps and Anypoint CLI to create a CI/CD pipeline. Uh, Before diving into the pipeline itself, let's go through what Anypoint CLI is. Uh, Anypoint CLI is, if you go into the MuleSoft website, in simple terms, Anypoint CLI is a scripting and a command line tool. So scripting tool basically means you can write scripts on it. You can write Java scripts or any shell scripts, and you can execute that. And you can create scripts like deployment scripts, alerting scripts. There's various scripts that you can write using the CLI. And there's also it's also a command line tool, which means like it has predefined sets of commands which you can use. And this commands, using these commands, you can interact with the Anypoint platform components. So we have components in the Anypoint platform like Design Center, Exchange, and Runtime Manager, API Manager, all those components. So you can interact with all those components using commands. So CLI has those predefined commands, and we use Anypoint CLI for that. And it's only specific for Anypoint platform and Anypoint platform private cloud edition, which means like it can be also used for your local servers. Using the Anypoint CLI, you can even connect to your local servers, and you can do various operations on that. It has that capability too. So this is what Anypoint CLI is, and it is used for. If you use Anypoint CLI in your command terminal, it would look something like this. So if you're like a very code geek and you like using terminal and writing commands, so it would look something like this. We'll go through the demo of all the commands and how to work on Anypoint CLI. So this is like a sample terminal screen of the Anypoint CLI. Just wanted to show this to you guys. Yeah, and just as I said, Anypoint CLI is used for all various Anypoint platform components. So these are few of the capabilities that I just said. It can be used for your administering Anypoint platform account. It can be also used to administer your design center applications. You can manage your Exchange assets using Anypoint CLI. You can even administer Cloud Hub applications, which means you can like deploy applications into Cloud Hub using Anypoint CLI. You can start an application, stop an application, update an application, and all those processes you can do it. You can even manage your local servers and even administer your local server groups, the local cluster servers. And again, you can have alerts. You can manage your alerts. You can have alert management scripts as well using Anypoint CLI. And if your Cloud Hub has like a dedicated load balancer, you can even manage your dedicated load balancers through your Anypoint CLI. You can even manage your VPCs, and there's you can use various environments, switch between environments, and all those stuff. So we can do that from Anypoint CLI. So since we have talked a lot about Anypoint CLI, let's just see like how to use it, because unless we use it, then it's of no use. It's just words. So let's do like a practical demo and see how the Anypoint CLI command works. So before installing Anypoint CLI, there's like few additional things that's needed to be installed in your system. The first thing that you need is Node.js. You need the Node.js to run your npm commands and the scripts. So you need Node.js to be installed in your system. It's pretty easy. If you go into this link, it's a pretty simple installer. You can download an installer based on the system you have, either Windows or Mac, and you can install it into your system. and most of y'all have Git. If you don't have Git, you can install Git in your system as well. So once this tool is installed, Node.js and Git, the next thing we need to do in order to install Anypoint CLI is run this command, this npm install -g Anypoint CLI latest. So if you go into your terminal, open your terminal in Windows, you can work on a command prompt and just paste this. Now, most of the time what happens is you might not have a specific folder access to your particular user. So sometimes it might throw an error that it might fail to install or the installation was not successful. So what I would recommend to do, so similarly here you can see error, it says like the permission denied. So in order to avoid such errors in Windows, what you can do during installation is you can run the command prompt as an administrator, or in terminal you can just add the command which is sudo in front of it. Do sudo npm install and enter the password of your system. Yeah. So once you do that, it will download the Anypoint CLI package and it will install it into your system. So installing Anypoint CLI in your system is pretty easy. So it says like it has installed it, and I'll just clear the screen. Yeah. So once your Anypoint platform is installed, now my Anypoint CLI is installed in my system. So now what I want to do is I want to run the Anypoint CLI commands. Before running the Anypoint CLI commands, the first thing that we need to do is actually log in to your Anypoint platform. So the syntax for that is pretty simple. You would just type this command, Anypoint CLI username, and the username should be the username of your platform. So if you go into your Anypoint platform, if you go here, you can just copy this username and go to your terminal, go here, give this username. Yep, enter this username. It will ask for the password. Give the password of your platform, and you are into your Anypoint CLI. So you're connected to your Anypoint platform. Now the best part about this Anypoint CLI tool is you don't have to mug up or remember any of the commands. Suppose I'm pretty new to Anypoint CLI and I am using it for the first time, and Anypoint CLI has like several commands. It has like over 100 or maybe more commands, and you don't want to mug up all the commands. The easiest way of doing is, and this tool is pretty useful in that, is suppose if I'm pretty new, I don't know any commands, I'll just do help and it will tell me what all systems or what all commands I can use. So you can say like these are the uh, commands that I can use. I can start a command with account, and account has 7 sub commands under it. So for example, I'll type account and I don't know what I should write after account. So what I'll do is I'll press enter. So it'll tell me what's after account. So it'll say, okay, it's business group list or business group describe. So it's so adaptive that it tells you what all commands are, what are the valid commands you can do. So you don't have to mug up any commands. For example, if I want to deploy an application in my Cloud Hub, so what I'll do is I'll just write Cloud Hub and I'll see what are the available commands in Cloud Hub. So if I see here, uh, yeah, these are the available commands in Cloud Hub. And if I want to do application, suppose in Runtime Manager, I'll just type Runtime Manager. It will tell me what are the commands in Runtime Manager. So suppose if I want to deploy Cloud Hub applications, it would be Runtime Manager, Cloud Hub applications. I just have to tab. I don't even have to type it. You just tab it. It just auto writes for you. And then when you do Runtime Cloud Hub application, it shows what are the operations you want to do. Do you want to deploy? Do you want to modify? Do you want to list? What all applications are there? And all this thing. And even you can change the environment as well. You can use environment. So it's just like the get command, you do use environment. And since it's a demo account, I'll just say use environment sandbox. So it switch to environment sandbox. So if you go into your Anypoint platform, so this is a pretty simple tool. The backend operation is similar to what it's in the website, to what the command line interface is doing, CLI. So even in the backend, what's happening is when you type a command in the CLI backend, the command makes a call to the REST API, similar to what happens in the website. So if you make a call, suppose to the runtime manager, Cloud Hub deploy, so in the backend, what it does is it makes a REST API call to the runtime manager REST API, and it does the operation similar to the website. So what you can do in website, the same thing you can do with the command line interface as well. So here, like in my design center, I have one specification here, API specification, and I can just go into here and do API manager, and I can do API manager API list. I can just do this, and I can, uh, yeah, I can see, oh, this is API manager. I need to go to design center project list. If I do design center project list, you can see I can get the name of the projects in my design center. So that's pretty much all in Anypoint CLI, what you can do through the terminal. Until here, do you have any questions? Yes, we need to update the path variables for Windows and even for Mac. So what you need to do is, sorry, I'll exit here. So in Windows, when you install your Node.js, you need to go into your Windows settings and environment variables and point it to the folder where your Node.js is installed. So that should be added into your environment path in Windows. In Mac, if this user local bin, this thing has to be part of your this path variable. If this is there, you can run the Anypoint CLI command uh, straight away from your root. Like you don't have to go into the specific folder or anything. So just these are the like the path updates that you need to do. So sudo means if you want to act or if you want to execute a command as like the root user, you can even use root. So sudo means you are like the system admin of that system. So any command that you run using sudo, it will execute like, so you'll have all the execute permissions, all the read permissions and everything for that. So CLI, so when you write scripts, right? So when you write deployment scripts, letting scripts, so it's better. So what the advantage of Anypoint CLI is you can write shell scripts using these commands, and it actually helps. It helps in writing scripts like deployment scripts and all those stuff. You can use APIs to build your pipelines too, but you can't develop a flexible script using your HTTP request APIs. So the CLI would be used basically when you want to write scripts, and if you want to even do monitoring and all those stuff, it's pretty much easy using the Anypoint CLI. Yep, I'm going there. Okay, I'll dive into the Anypoints, the CI/CD stuff, and then we'll move into all the other questions. Yeah, so this was more about the Anypoint CLI. This was just the introduction to the Anypoint CLI, and now I'll show you the CI/CD, like how to create a CI/CD pipeline using Anypoint CLI. So before that, we all know what CI/CD is, right? Like CI/CD is continuous integration and continuous deployment, and for successful for in most of the organizations, the work process, they have like a strong concrete CI/CD pipeline where there's like a good workflow on how they develop code, how they produce code, and there's various options of developing CI/CD pipeline like Jenkins, Maven, and you can develop using the Cloud Hub REST APIs. You can use create your pipelines in DevOps. So there's various options of developing your CI/CD pipelines. Um, we'll see this example where we'll use a CI/CD pipeline using Anypoint CLI. And what I would like to do is I would use Azure DevOps in here to incorporate all the CI/CD process and to use this Anypoint CLI commands. So how the process would work is, so how the process of getting the code and deploying it, like the entire CI/CD process would work in DevOps is, you'll have a Git repository. It can be a Azure DevOps repo itself, or it can be a GitHub. Anything is fine. So how the pipeline would work is, it would read the code from a GitHub, it would build the project, and it would publish the artifact into Azure DevOps. So this would be like your first pipeline, the main pipeline. It will just read the code from a GitHub and build project and publish into Azure DevOps. Now what your release pipeline would do is, it would just download the artifact that was saved into DevOps, and it will download this artifact, and it will deploy that artifact into various environments in MuleSoft using the CLI commands. So let's dive into a very small example. So we'll do like a complete end-to-end example. It shouldn't take much time. So we'll create a complete pipeline using Anypoint CLI and DevOps. So before that, let's create a very small project, a very simple project. I'll create this as a test project. CLI test. Let's get a very simple project. Have a listener. I would have a logger, and I would have like a. So it's a pretty simple project. I'll just have like a hello world project. This is fine. I'll give a test. I'll just add a logger. And I'll add so this is like a pretty simple hello world project, nothing major in it. And what I want to do is I want to push this code into a Git repository. So what I'll do is I'll go into GitHub, I'll create a new repository here, and I'll give the name same as the project. Keep it as public as of now, and yeah, it's created. So now what I'll do is I'll push in my code into this Git repository. It is here. I'll do a git init. And add this line here. Do this. So yep, once you do it, so now whatever changes I did in my code, it's now pushed into GitHub. So I see, so my code is currently in the GitHub. So if you go into the diagram, so now I have my code in the Git. Now what I have to do is I have to create my pipeline that will read this code, build the project, and publish the artifact in DevOps. So what you need to do is you need to go into your Azure DevOps. You can create a test account as well if you want to try it out. You go into your Azure DevOps, and once you log into the Azure DevOps, you'll find various options here of creating. So if you click on this pipelines, you'll get the option of creating pipelines, creating releases, and library and all those stuff. So first thing that you need to do is, so this concept of library is used when you want to define some common variables that you want to use throughout your pipelines. So there's one common pattern that we do is whenever we want to deploy an application to Cloud Hub or even in standalone server or any other server, you need to give the credentials for the to the server that you're deploying. So in the libraries, you can define the credentials that you want to give to your, like you want to use in your pipelines. So I just created this Cloud Hub creds, and I've added what's my client ID, what's my client secret, what's the username of my Cloud Hub, and what's the password. The client ID, client secret, you can get it in your platform if you go into here in your organization. And yeah, if you go into organization and just click in your organizations, you'll get your client ID and client secret here in the organization. So if you're deploying any of the applications in Cloud Hub, and if you want to use the policies in API Manager and all those interrelated features, you need to provide this client ID and client secret in your project. Since we use that in all the pipelines, we add it in this library. So you just go into library, create a variable group, and add these values because it will be useful in the pipelines. The other common thing that we might have seen in most of our pipelines is we use settings.xml. So if it's like a Maven based project and you're using Maven commands, you upload your settings.xml. Settings.xml is pretty similar to this. You just add your credentials, your new repository credentials, and any Nexus repository or any other repository that you're using, and you just add your settings.xml. And the other thing that we need is this credentials file as a secure file. This credentials file is the file which has the credentials for your environment. It looks something like this, what environment you're working on, your username, password, your organization, and the environment. This credentials file is used in the Anypoint CLI. So if you're building your pipeline in Anypoint CLI, you'll need this credentials file. And in case of real projects, you can have it like different for different environments, different object. Like for dev, you'll have a different similar object. For QA, you'll have another object. For prod, you'll have a different object. And the object structure inside would be the same, like the username, password, organization, and environment. So you need this credentials file whenever you're creating a CI/CD pipeline using DevOps. So these are the prerequisites that we need to do before doing a pipeline. That is creating this variable and adding this secure files. So once these are done, the next step is to create a pipeline. So we'll go into the pipeline section. We'll do create pipeline, and if we go into this diagram, the only thing that we need to do in this pipeline is just read the code from the Git, build my project, and publish the artifact. That's it. So what we need to do here now in our pipeline is go into this pipeline section, use the classic editor. That's the simplest way of and the easiest way of doing it. Link your GitHub. To just click on GitHub, and if you do it for the first time, it will ask you to it'll just pop up a window and ask you to log into GitHub. It just does for the first time, and it will generate a token. So once you link your GitHub account with your DevOps, you'll get this thing, authorized using connection, and then you'll be able to see all the repositories that present in your GitHub. So since we checked in our code in Anypoint CLI demo, what we'll do is we'll select this repository and we'll select the branch. Currently in our project, we have only one branch master. So there's like no other branches, so master is fine. So link my Git and select Maven as your project. Yeah. So what's the first step here? It's basically deploying the artifact. So it generates this skeleton for you. So this skeleton is generated for you, and even the goals that you need, the Maven goals that you need to create your jar. So this is the Maven package goal that you want to do, and then whatever the jar is generated. Now, when you do when you read the code and when you run the command of Maven package, you'll have a jar of like or the deployable archive of your application in the target folder. So what you want to do is you want to copy that file, whatever the jar file is, and you want to publish that artifact into a particular folder or a particular location. So you can so this skeleton is generated by default when you use the Maven command. So you don't have to do any changes here. It just takes the code and it will deploy it. So once it's done, I'll update this to Maven package. Maven package, it will do it. Publish artifact drop, and it will just create this artifact for you. No variables needed for this. I'll just save. You can give the name here. We'll just keep it this. So we'll just save that. Cute. So this is the first thing that you need to do when you want to create a CI/CD pipeline using CLI. So Anypoint CLI commands are not yet into the picture. The reason being that Anypoint CLI only operates with deployable archives. So it only needs a jar or a zip. It can't take a code and deploy it. So we need to do this additional step of creating and deploying the jar into DevOps. You can even deploy this jar into like JFrog or any other resource where you want to store this jar. This is like the easiest approach of doing it in the same place. You can even do it like deploying your archive in a in JFrog and reading it from there. So now once this is done, so we actually now did this part where we read the code, we build the project using our Maven command, and we publish the artifact into Azure DevOps. Now in this release pipeline is the where our Anypoint CLI will come into the picture. So what we need to do now is we need to go into the releases section, and we need to create a new release pipeline. So release means the code now which we will deploy into uh, various environments. So when the first thing, when you click on this release pipeline, it will create this skeleton for you, and it will ask you like where do you want the artifact from. And so in our case, we want the artifact from whatever was the output of our pipeline. So we have our from here. Yeah. So we have a pipeline webinar demo Maven CI. So we created this pipeline, and this pipeline is responsible for getting the code and pushing the artifact. So whatever artifact is published after this pipeline, we want that jar in our release pipeline. So once you go into a release pipeline, create a new pipeline, and when you add an artifact here, just select this pipeline. You select the build option. There's various options of getting the artifact. You can get it from GitHub or Jenkins, and there's various other options of getting it. We want the jar which is built from a pipeline. So we'll select build, we'll select the project, we'll select the pipeline which we want from. So we have defined this webinar demo Maven CLI, and source alias is the name of the folder, or is the name of the root folder where our artifact would be stored. So how the artifact is stored is, suppose if I give this name, so we all know like the artifact is stored in a target folder. So if my source alias name is this, my jar would be present in a folder like there would be a drop folder under this, there would be a target folder under this, and it would be this thing, Anypoint CLI demo, or name demo 1.0.0.snapshot dot jar, something like this. So that's the name of the alias. So source alias is the name of the root folder that you want to give where your jar would be downloaded. So that's the name of this. So once you do this, and default version is so you want to always take, it's not necessary if you want to take a latest version or not. So this versioning means suppose if you run this pipeline multiple times, it will create multiple versions for you. So you can have either a specific version of the jar or the latest version of the jar. Anything is possible. In this example, we'll take the latest version and we'll just select it. So this is the process where it will download that artifact that was created. And now we'll have the stage where we'll deploy our application into Cloud Hub. Yeah, I'll just say deploy to sandbox. Yeah, deploy to sandbox, and yeah. And when you use Anypoint CLI as Anypoint CLI commands in your CI/CD pipeline, it's very much important in the initial step that your agent is either running on Windows, Mac, or an Ubuntu system. If you do the VS 2017, it actually will give an error because it's not able to run the shell script commands. So you can use a Mac or a Windows. Any agent is fine. I'll use Mac in this, and then you have to add jobs into this. So there's two jobs that's needed. One is download secure file, and the other one is bash script. Yep. These are the only two components that we need to deploy an application. To download the secure file, so remember in the library we added two secure files. One was settings and the other one was credentials. So we need to add here credentials, because for the Anypoint CLI commands we need this credentials file. And in the bash script is the place where you'll add the deployment script of your Anypoint CLI deployment scripts. So the Anypoint CLI deployment script looks something like, so I've already saved it, save time. So your bash script would look something like this. I'll walk through the script here. Yeah, so this is where your script comes in. The first thing that we need to do is install the Anypoint into the agent, and sudo, again we are using sudo because we don't want to face any access denied issues. We want to save this credentials in the root folder so that we can use it in our process below. And then there's various profiles that we defined here. So each section here is known as a profile. So this is a sandbox profile, this is a dev profile, and QA profile. So in our example, we want to use the profile which is sandbox. So you need to export this variable, and it's specific. You need to use Anypoint profile. So this is the value that you need to set. And again, in this yeah, and then in the export file name you give the similar kind of file name, that is the alias name, the drop, the target, and the name of the file, the alias name, drop, target, like where your jar is installed. So it means that jar name. And then here comes your Anypoint CLI deploy script. So this is the deployment script where you give the runtime, what worker you want, the worker size, the region, the client ID, and the client secret. So you can define it in the variables here. You can add it like app name, and give it as Anypoint CLI This would be the app name that is installed in the cloud. You can give the app name, you can give the region where you want to install, which can be US West 2, and runtime, which is 4.2.2, worker size, we'll give it as 0.1 vcore worker size, and we'll only add one worker. So these are the few deployment configuration that we need to do. So once this is done, and then in the variable groups you can link your cloud upgrades that we defined in the library. And once that's done, you go into here, this is file name. Let's just check what the file name is here. It's Anypoint CLI test. So Anypoint CLI test, and yeah, this is here. We'll update the jar name, which is Anypoint CLI test. Yep. So this is done. This is like the script we need to do, and just save it. We'll give the name as Anypoint CLI release. Such. We'll save it. Any questions up till now, or is it like too complicated? Yeah, Azure DevOps itself, it uses repos. You can use Azure DevOps repos as well. I just added GitHub to show like you can even have, because most of the repos are not in Azure DevOps. You can have like in Bitbucket or any other Git, so it's fine. And yeah, this works on on-prem development as well. So in this section, you can actually give like a host. There's another command you can give into the profile, which is host, and you can actually give the URL where you want to deploy it. So the same thing can be done in deployment of in your standalone servers as well. So all the dependent artifacts are stored in this. So there's this predefined variable in DevOps, which is let me just give me one sec. I had that variable. Give me one sec. Yeah. So all these are it's not in this variable. I actually had it. I saved it somewhere. I don't know where it is. But yeah, there's like a specific folder which is like a predefined value. It has like a predefined value similar to this release.primary artifact. It's named different. If you can Google it, you can find it. It's similar to this, and there's a specific folder location where all the artifacts are present in there. And no, you can use you can use the Azure DevOps agent itself to host the CLI. There's no need to have like a private separate agent for that. You can use the agent that's in the Azure DevOps, and you can host your Anypoint CLI. Okay. Yeah, so to install the CLI in DevOps, so if you go into your bash script here, so in the bash script, the first thing that I do is npm install my Anypoint CLI. The first thing you do is this. The reason why we use either Mac or Windows agent is this statement you can run it without installing npm in your system, because it comes like that. You can run all the npm commands by default in that, because it comes pre-installed. So this is the place where we install our Anypoint CLI client in Azure DevOps in your bash script in your release pipeline. So you need, so what you need to do is, if you go into the command terminal again, I'll just, so there's this use command. I don't know whether you have had it. Yeah. So if you can see this screen here, where it is. Yeah. So you can in this one, you can actually that you have access to. There might be several business groups, and by default, when you log into your Anypoint CLI, it actually logs you into the master business group. So suppose if you are in a particular business group and you don't have access to it, but you have access to a secondary business group. So what you do is you use this business group command, and in the brackets similar to this, like use environment, similar to this, you'll use like use business group, and in quotes you'll give your business name, and then that you'll be switched to the business group that you have access to. For CLI deployment, are you using any job for publishing the artifact? Yes, I'm. So I went through that. If you go into this, if it's saved, right? So for deploying the artifact, publishing the artifact, I had a separate pipeline. So this pipeline is only responsible for getting the code, creating the jar, and pushing it into the Azure DevOps Artifactory. That is like the predefined folder, which is this one, this release.primary artifact source alias. So what this specific pipeline does is just to take the code and deploy it into the not deploy, publish it into the specific defined folder, and then to deploy that artifact, I'm doing it in the same release pipeline here. If you see in this release pipeline, if I edit it, if I go into my script here, and you can see here, this is the place where it's actually getting deployed to Cloud. So this is actually a CLI command, and we are passing in several parameters to this, like what's the runtime from this variables that we have defined here. It's better to give it through the variables than give it to a command line, because you can reuse it for multiple pipelines. So yeah, so in this, you do is deploy, and if you have like specific properties, like if you want to give a property like a property like mule dot, most of the projects you have this, right, like mule dot env equal to dev, suppose. Oh, there shouldn't be any space, so you can give your specific property as well in this. So this is the this is fully the CLI commands that we use here. So yeah, did I answer your question? Do we need a settings.xml for CLI deployment? No, we don't need a settings.xml for CLI deployment. The only file that we need for CLI deployment is this is the credentials file, which is this one, a credentials file, which is similar to this file. We don't need a settings.xml for CLI deploy for Anypoint CLI. We need settings.xml if we do any Maven operation, like a Maven deploy or Maven test and all those stuff. So for all the Maven operations, we need settings.xml, but for Endpoint CLI, we don't need a settings.xml file. Which agent job do you want to see? The one which is in the release pipeline, or the one which is publishing the artifact? Oh, the build pipeline. Okay. Do you mean this one, the pipeline, the script for this? I'll just show you this. Give me one second. Pipelines. Right. Yeah. So the pipeline for this is pretty simple. What we do is we get the code from our GitHub, the Anypoint CLI demo. Like this is our Git repository. So we get the code from here and get the code, and then first thing we do is we do the Maven package. When we do Maven package, it would build the project and generate a jar in our target folder. What we are doing is we are copying that jar file and saving it into this build artifact staging directory, and this is the directory which is like a staging folder, like how we do in Git. Like if you want to push any changes, first thing we do is we stage all the files. So if you want to publish any files, so first what we need to do is we need to copy that into this folder. So that's the step that we do here. And once we copy the file here, the next thing we do is publish the artifact, and we give the artifact name as drop. You can give the artifact name whatever you wish. If you give a name different than that, then the folder name would be changed. So this is how. So this is like the complete pipeline for getting the code and publishing the artifact. This is. Yep. We'll send this video. So we are recording this session, so we'll obviously send this video. Yeah. So you can even use Maven commands uh, instead of Anypoint CLI. So Anypoint CLI, you can have, you can write your own scripts of deployment scripts, and it gives you flexibility. Now both Maven commands and CLI commands does the same thing. Like I can even have like a simple job which would, like, if I add a Maven mule deploy here, it will just deploy the code into a mule. I can do it in one pipeline itself, and even I can have a CLI command. So both of them does the same thing. It again depends on what you want to use and which use case suits you better. If if you just want to do like a Maven deploy, you can do it. And if you want to have some flexibility or some script around the deployment, like if you want to add like an if else, some checking, and if you want to take or if you want to do some, what you can say, listing of applications or any other scripting stuff that you want to do in your deployment, then you'll use Anypoint CLI commands. But overall, the CLI command for deployment and the Maven command for mule deploy, in the end does the same thing. It deploys the application. So there's no good thing for that, but yeah. Yes, you can actually do it. Instead of creating manually, you can create YAML files as well. In short, when you do it manually in the backend, it's creating a YAML file itself. So even when you do like manual and you add job, it just gets YAML file. I like using this feature because it's easy. You drag and drop, you add, you just config. You don't have to go and type anything. But if I drag and provide a configuration, it will generate this YAML for me automatically. And if you want to do this, like you can just copy this YAML, and you can copy it, and in your Git repository, you can create a YAML file in your root directory, and it would be the same. Both the ways are fine. Okay. Yes. I'll run the release pipeline now, and then we'll see it. So once the release pipeline is ready, I'll go into the releases. So what my releases is doing is just getting that jar and deploying it to sandbox. Now since we have only one environment in the trial account, I'm deploying just to sandbox. In real projects, you'll have another stage which will be like deploy to QA, deploy to UAT, deploy to prod. And you can actually automate your pipeline. Like what can happen, like you can have someone review your code or review the build. So you can have triggers, you can have pre-deployment approvals. So you can add a group, like only if this person in my team approves that okay, the code can go in the upper environments, then only the deployment would run. So you can have all these configurations here in this pre-deployment triggers. I won't have anything for this test. Let's just run it through. So what I'll do is I'll just create release. So once you create release, it just runs your release pipeline. And here you see it goes into this webinar demo Maven CI, this release pipeline that you created, and it takes the latest version. So currently we have only one version of jar installed. So it will take that and I'll say created. And you could see that in the logs that a release pipeline has been created, and you can actually view the logs here. Once it deployed, do you have any more questions? Yeah, sure. I could show you through the python.yaml file as well. It's 90% similar. It's 90% similar. The only thing we need to do is we need to add the YAML file in the Git repository, and we need to do few tweaks in DevOps. So yeah, surely. I can show you some other video on how to do it through the YAML file. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the first step that it does. It downloads the artifact. So you see it goes into there. It downloaded your jar that was generated from your Maven deploy. So it does that, and now it goes into this bash script where it actually runs your script that you had in your job. So you can see it says deploy Anypoint CLI webinar demo. So it's deploying our application. Now if I go into my Anypoint platform, and if I go into my runtime manager here, and let it load slowly. Yeah, so my job went through successful. Let's see where it got deployed or not. Meanwhile, any more questions? Yeah. Yeah, sometimes the Anypoint platform can take some time to load. Yeah, so if I go into the runtime manager and in my sandbox, I can see that my application is now deploying. And if I see it in the logs, yeah, it's deploying. Yeah, and your application is started. So if I go into the domain here, what's the domain? So I just ran a simple endpoint test and check whether everything is working or not. So I'll go here, I'll go into my Postman. I just ran a simple test here. The endpoint was test. I'll send a request. So I get a hello world response, and in the logger I can see this test one. So like my application is working fine. And what's so this is like a complete release pipeline, but there's an issue with Anypoint CLI. That's not an issue in Maven. Is that now if I run the similar command, so how the Maven commands work is, if I do a Maven deploy of the same application name again, so it recognizes that the application already exists and it will just update it. But the Anypoint CLI does not do that. If you run the release pipeline again, like the same release pipeline again, if I just do a create release again, it will throw an error, and the error message would be like the application already exists. But in real case scenario, we don't want that. We don't want the deploy to just work once, and in the second step should throw an error. The script should be smart enough to know when to modify and when to deploy. So that's the advantage of CLI, is you can have your logic, and you can have your logic in your script. So how your actual script would be, so in this case here, what we will do is, so there's let me go through here. Okay, so in my batch script here, what I'll do is, I'll update the script. So do you see this logical OR case here? So that's the advantage of using the script. You can have if check, else check, and logical operators and all this stuff. So what I say, so how the OR condition works is, if my mule deploy fails, if my deploy fails, then do a modify. If my deploy fails, then do a modify. So when you run this command in this, so it would not fail when you run the second uh, call. Because how this logical OR works is, so this second thing works as a fallback command. So like if the first command before this logical OR fails, the second command would be executed. If the first command is executed perfectly, it will stop there and you just deploy it. And if this gives an error, then the pipeline won't stop. It would go into this second section, and it would say, yeah, I don't want to deploy it, then I'll modify it, and it will modify using the same configuration again, and in that case your pipeline would work fine. So this is like a complete script of complete CI/CD script you want to do before for deploying your applications to Cloud Hub. You can have other commands as well in the between if you want, but this is like a pretty basic CI/CD pipeline using the Anypoint CLI commands. Because we are just using like one command here, which is the Cloud Hub application deploy. You can have other commands as well. You can have API manager commands as well if you want. In your deployment scripts, you can play around with the scripting commands, and you can build a pretty secure and pretty good pipeline. So that's so for references, you can go through this links. This links have pretty good information of how to build. So this link has the Anypoint CLI information. This link has the commands, or all the commands we have in Anypoint CLI. And this is another pretty good link of how to create your pipeline with Azure DevOps. So if you are pretty interested in Azure DevOps, and if you want to learn how to build your pipelines, release pipelines, and how to store artifacts in this, so this is a pretty good link. It gives pretty good information of how to building a pipeline. And the best part about this article is it uses Anypoint CLI to develop the pipeline. So if you're interested in both of the topics, it's a perfect article for you. That's what I had. uh, do you have any other questions? Any questions? Anything you want to go through? Yeah, I'll share the video, and I'll even share this PPT with the entire group, and you'll get all the reference links, and you'll even have access to this video if you want in the future to refer this. So you'll get access to this, all of the stuff that we had in the webinar. Yeah. Do we have any questions? Any questions related to this? Any recommendations you want for the next webinar? Anything you feel like was not covered properly but can be covered in future? Any feedback on that would be highly appreciated. Yep. Thanks. So as I mentioned earlier, there's like two polls that I'll send you guys. So yeah. So yeah. So when you get time, just give a feedback. It would be highly appreciated. And if you want any topics in the future for the webinar related to any point platform or MuleSoft or any domain, just give that as a recommendation. So this Anypoint CLI topic was not in the site, but it was recommended by someone in the last session, and I pretty much wanted to do a complete end-to-end session on this. It's a pretty vague topic. It's not that straightforward. It's not that easy because there's like so many things going on, and if you're not like comfortable with Azure DevOps, it can get too overwhelming. But still, I wanted to keep it simple, but it might be like there were too many things going on that happened. But yeah, we should have had like a longer session for this. Yeah. Yeah, cool. That we will do it. We'll do it pretty soon. The pipeline amplifiers, major develops. Yeah, cool. If we don't have any questions or anything, we can end the session here. Uh, if you have any topics in mind, just send us, and we'll have someone to present on that. Are we good to end the session? Okay, cool. Thank you guys for all attending this. Uh, it's it was good. Yeah. Bye. Everyone, take care. Have a good rest of your day.